Alright, Guten Erev Shabbos, everybody. It's Erev Shabbos Parshas Bo, which is my bar mitzvah parsha. Even though my birthday is next week, I remember the Melamed in Hebrew school being concerned that perhaps my bar mitzvah sedra would actually be B'Shalach, which is the longest haftarah. In the end, I didn't lay the haftarah for Bo either. I just had an aliyah on a Monday morning. Very easy, and I think that's what led me, in a certain way, to Yiddishkeit, was because my bar mitzvah was so easy. I had such an easy time, and that was it. Anyway, there's a Dvar Torah I like to share. I think I've shared in past years, but I know a lot of people don't watch the old videos. They watch whatever comes out currently, which is great. You can go back and watch the old videos too. You can do both. You can do one, you can do the other. Most people do nothing because they don't know about our channel. But I thank you all, those who are watching, because you're from the Yechidei Segula and the B'nai Aliyah. And I really mean that. Anyway, in the plague of darkness, which is the penultimate plague, it's their terminology there says V'yamesh choshech, which generally is translated, means that the darkness became palpable. However, there is also an understanding of that V'yamesh is lashon hasora. It means removal. That actually the darkness was removed. The Kedushas Levi brings this and explains. I don't have to get into all the Kabbalistic imagery that he brings there, but essentially what he's saying is that the darkness, because the reason why he's preferring the translation to say that the darkness was removed is because it says L'chol b'nei Yisrael haya'or b'moishvoisam. For all the children of Israel there was light in their dwelling places. So I understand that to mean the Kedushas Levi, the Heilige Berditchev Rav, Reb Levi Yitzchak Sar Sasha Berditchev, Zchus Yedlein Al Kli Salome, understands that to mean that that when it says there was light in all the Israelite homes, that means to say, if there was a plague of darkness, and the darkness was something that was tangible, so it should have simply said there was no darkness. By saying that there was light seems to indicate that there was more light than before. And so the way that the Kedushas Levi explains it essentially is that God is everywhere and everything. He created, which we can understand, he created from himself according to Chassidus. He created filters so that we could exist and feel that we are independent beings and, understand our own and be sentient on our own in a way that feels as if it's distinct from God. And it's not only us, but there are other forms of intelligent existence that exist throughout the universe that feel themselves to be separate from God. They recognize they live their lives in a way that's sentient and separate from God, even though we're all made out of God, so to speak. But we perceive ourselves to be separate. And the reason for that is, because God concealed his light, he contracted his light, and constricted his light, and filtered his light for the purpose of us to have free will. And so each creation, in order to exist, has to have the proper filtration, because without a proper filter, we could either, if the filter is too open, we'd be essentially blinded by the light. And if the filter is too closed, we wouldn't have enough access to this light to continue existing, because in order to exist, we need God to continue to exist. And so therefore, it has to be precisely the right amount of light for us to continue to exist. Or else we would either be overwhelmed or we'd be cut off. And each creature on its own level, we human beings among the sentient beings are among the lowest, but also we have tools with which we can grow, whereas the other sentient beings essentially are static and don't have the opportunity for growth. We are given tools, which the Kedushas Levi points out are the mitzvos, the commandments, which give us that opportunity to develop better filtration and receive the light without being blinded by the light. And so we can go higher and higher spiritually, get closer and closer to the level of the angels by following God's commandments. But people who don't do that don't have the proper filtration. And so what essentially the Kedushas Levi explains is that the light of God is, limited by if we have the proper filtration, and without it, we could get blinded by that light. So either God filters it for us, or we filter it through following His will, which also is God working through us. But we are given this gift to make the choice. And the Kedushas Levi essentially is saying that what happened during the plague of darkness is that God took away the darkness. And so the Egyptians, who did not have the proper vessels, the proper tools, the proper filtration to receive the divine light, were blinded by the light. But the Israelites, who had the proper filtration, were able to receive that light. And then he explains that in the end times, we are taught that the light and the filtration of the sun will be taken away, and the wicked will be judged by the light of the sun, and the righteous will be healed by it. And obviously what we're saying is something deeper, talking about that essentially that the light is there, and we have to receive it in the right way. And I teach this in another way also about the afterlife. Heaven and hell are the same place. When we're familiar with, I believe it's a medrash that says that heaven and hell are both basically a place where you're like held in stocks and you're given delicious food in front of you and very long forks, and there's someone across the table from you in the same situation. And if you are kind, you will feed the person who's in front of you, and the person who's in front of you will feed you. And if you are cruel, you're going to try to feed yourself, but you can't reach your mouth. The person in front of you is going to try to feed himself, he can't reach his mouth. And if you were only generous instead of selfish, you would get everything you need. And we set ourselves up like that in this world, essentially. We make our decisions in life, and then we're set in our ways when we get to the next world. In the same way, the afterlife is compared to the Sabbath. There are certain people who they can't wait for Shabbos to come, and once Shabbos is here, they are dreading to leave Shabbos, and so they keep Shabbos longer than they have to, because they love Shabbos. And certain people who are sitting around looking at their watch, when is this going to be over already so I can go smoke a cigarette or go drive to the pizza shop or something, And the afterlife is compared to Shabbos. And Shabbos is compared to the afterlife. This is our great test. Are we accepting this light? Are we going to have the proper filtration? Or are we going to be blinded by the light and uncomfortable in its presence? Are we going to be able to adjust our eyes and see what's really going on? Another mashal you could give is pretty much the same one. There's certain people, they don't like to be in a holy place. They're uncomfortable in worship, in prayer, in devotional study. And other people, that's kihem chayenu v'arachimenu, that's all they want. And they look forward to when they can get back to that block of Mara, or when they could get back to their siddur, get back to their tehillah. And it's the same thing, because when we're in the next world, that's pretty much all we're going to be doing. It's going to be just one endless Shabbos where we're davening and learning. And if you I'm using my religion as an example, but you can use your religion if you're not Jewish. If you're Christian, it's the same thing. Certain people they love being in church, and certain people can't stand it. If you're Muslim, there's certain people that love to go to the mosque, and certain people just feel it's an obligation. They got to get this out of the way. And whatever it is, whatever your religion is, I'm not, I believe my religion is true. But you can use this lesson that I'm teaching you and apply it to any religion. The question is, where are you now? When you are in a heavenly place, do you experience that place as heaven or as hell? And unfortunately, there's some people in those heavenly places that make it hell for other people and for themselves, and abuse those places. I'm not talking about that, though. Let's put that aside. I know it's going to be a trigger for some people, but find whatever your happy place is. It's an issue of happiness in life. It's not, look at how miserable so many people on the left are today because they cannot find any happiness in life. Dennis Prager was talking about how the pursuit of happiness is a virtue. People feel guilty because they're pursuing happiness. They feel like they're not good enough, they don't deserve it. But the thing is, you are good enough. And if you work on it, you deserve it. If you attain it, if you put in that effort. I mean, yes, the Kabbalists speak of Nahamad and Sufa, of the bread of shame, that people feel shame when they get something they didn't earn. And so God in His abundant mercy gave us at least this illusion that we're earning His favor by following His world. But really, the truth is, the guidebook that God gave us in life is just a guide to happiness. And the thing is, sometimes people, they look at the logos and miss out on the mythos. They look at the body and lose out on the spirit. And I'm talking about religion. You know, like Rabbi Weinberger's story about the guy who was running around hearing the shofar in 20 different places because he wanted to hear how all the different types of communities sound the shofar. And just to make sure he did it right. I think that's something else we got to talk about. I really want to make a separate video about this, but this is very important. These purity tests and this insistence on purity. And I don't mean spiritual purity, I don't mean tahara. I don't mean kedusha. I don't mean holiness and pure and holiness of purity. I mean the sense that people are trying to find, well, exactly how was it like this and that and what and this and that, and we have to do it exactly this way, and it's my way or the highway, and it becomes, and then they're not happy with the way that they've been, and they're searching, and that's what leads to people like, Yusuf al-Katub, who used to be Yosef Kohen, that he was this type of a chassid, and he was that type of a chassid, and then he was a Sephardi because he felt the Sephardim were more authentic than the Ashkenazim, which is true. Halachically speaking, in many ways, the Sephardim are more authentic. But that doesn't mean you have to stop being Ashkenazi just because the Sephardim are more authentic. Maybe for some people, that's how it works. And I understand, and if they're consistent with that for 50 years, like some people I know, gesund to hate. But these people who just, they're constantly searching to make sure that they're getting things exactly the right way. And what they wind up actually doing is, so then they're going to, wind up converting to another religion because is it this way, is it that way, is it this, is it that, is it bop, 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 bop. And I think part of that also is, it's a concept of fundamentalism where you're seeking a level of perfection that's unattainable because God is perfect and human beings are not perfect. And it's the same thing that Rabbi Yitzchak Leibowitz was talking about when they're a Satmar in light. They tell him, I'm tired of being Satmar. I want to become Breslov, or I want to become Chabad. And Rabbi Leibowitz still goes inside. He said, when you say I don't want to be a Satmar Chassid, it means I don't want to be just a Pashta Yid. I need some kind of label, something fancy, something different. And the thing is like Rabbi Yitzchak Leibowitz teaches, you could be a Satmar Chassid and learn the Breslover Sephardim, and you can learn the Chabad Sephardim, and you can learn the Sephardi Sephardim, and this one, you can learn all these Sephardim. You can learn Rav Hirsch. I saw Rabbi Yitzchak Leibowitz, a Yid who's a Talmud of the old Satmar Rav. He doesn't call himself a Satmar Chassid, but he, what was he learning with Shamshon Raphael Hirsch? It's not what you would expect, is it? But it's, so that's a proper, healthy approach, though, is to be able to be open to everything, to be able to receive everything without insisting, I have to have exactly the right label, to have everything exactly right, and then you're not happy with this way, so then I'm going to find another way, and this and that. The thing is, there's a time and a place for that also, and you gotta know, where, when, how to approach that. I understand. there is a time and a place, especially when people are young, they're trying to find themselves. And then there's also a place for growth in life and to recognize, that you can change. But you have to be consistent and changing. At the same time, you have to know exactly what you're talking about with to find that balance of, being yourself. That's also the poem that Rabbi Weinberg always reads from one of the girls from Ezra Academy of, the biggest fear I have when I draw close to you, God, is to lose myself. And this way, mina meitzar karasi ka nani b'merchav ka. From the straits I call out to you, and you answered me, God, with expansion. And part of this also, what we have to understand is that we can respect others without, the way I've heard it expressed once is you can think your wife is beautiful without thinking everybody else's wife is ugly. You can think your religion is beautiful and your culture is beautiful and your way of life is beautiful without thinking every other religion and culture is ugly and evil and despicable. And you could still be proud of who you are. And show, you can have pride without having hate. And this is what we're talking about right from the beginning. So it all comes together of this fear of losing yourself as you come close to God. The tools, I believe in my religion, to do that are the mitzvos. These are the way that we're able to draw close to God and still be like the angels, a seichel hanivdal, to be sentient on our own, not lose ourselves. The way that the Sikhs believe that you become totally one with God when you leave this world, and then you stop existing. Whereas the older Abrahamic traditions, whether they're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, tend to believe, and in a certain sense the Sikhs are Abrahamic because of their influence from the Sufi Muslims. But they are the opposite of Islam in their practice. But anyway, all of our traditions teach that the soul lives on as an independent creature. Maybe at some point it might stop existing and become totally one with the light of God. When it, when it gets to the point where it's able to doff all of these filters and be batel mitzias. I don't know about that. I don't think it's none of our business really what happens after the Tchias HaMesim and everything. But we do believe there's a Tchias HaMesim. We do believe that the soul continues as an independent being that will be resurrected. But the tools to accomplish that are through the Torah. And otherwise, we're either getting too much into the light where we can be nullified by the light, or too far from the light where we're cut off from our food source. Fascinating thing, though, is that the soul, we say, also needs food. The Mekubalim talk about this. My Rebbe, the Kalav Rebbe, talks about this. The soul food and the spiritual aspect of the food that we eat, because the Ariya Kodesh explains, talks about this, of how in order to maintain that, why would the soul leave the body if there's no food? It means that it needs to get food from somewhere. But we'll talk about that another time. Now it's not the time for that. But the main thing is to recognize this and to hope that we're from those who will be healed by the light. We have to recognize there's only one God. It's not a fight between God and the devil. It's only one God, and we have to make the choice to be able to follow him and not get burnt. And the way we do that is by following the instructions that he gave us, because that's the way to accomplish this. Have a good Shabbos. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. See you later.